Wait, Swolbi, what are you doing?
I'm sending you straight to Arceus. No one else is here to judge you, so as champion, I'll do it myself. Hello there, this is Swolbi on Kenobi, and welcome to my attempt at a hardcore Nuzlocke in the Pokemon Platinum game using only the fighting type. For what I consider to be the hardcore Nuzlocke rule set, check out the description below. But for the basics, only the first fighting type per route, a Pokemon that faints is done for, no non-held items in battle, the game has to be in set battle mode, and no leveling past the next gym leader or final Elite Four member's ace. With my name set to Swolbi, I start the game, and who else but Nancy immediately barges into my room. I'm relieved to see my rival again, though something about her seems different, off. I wonder to myself if her disappearance in Hoenn had anything to do with this, but for now, I brush it off, as we head out to get our starter for the run. Like the Hoenn region, the Sinnoh region is home to a fire and fighting starter Pokemon, and my personal favorite of the trio, Chimchar. We nab our starter from Professor Rowan, and from here it's time for our first battle against Nancy. We send in our Chimchar and... Wait. What just happened? This can't be right. Something is wrong. No matter how many times I try to progress, something prohibits me from continuing. I continue this struggle for a week. A week of being stuck in a time loop, no answers, no reasoning, and no sign of how to end this nightmare. Eventually, something funny happens. And after what must have been thousands of resets, I find myself repeating the loop. But after I throw out my Chimchar, I don't reset. And that's when I notice. This Chimchar is shiny. An inkling of an idea begins to form in my mind, but I brush it off for now. I finish the battle with the oddly friendly Nancy, and for the first time in a week, I get to continue my journey. After I head home to talk to my mom, I check out my shiny Chimchar, who has the Blaze ability and a neutral hardy nature, perfect for a future mixed attacking Infernape. The newly kind Nancy insists on heading to Lake Verity to see if we can spot the local legendary Pokemon. But when we arrive, the only thing that we find is a strange man with blue hair who appears to be speaking to no one, saying something about space and time, and that soon everything would finally be over. He turns to leave, and as he walks past, he appears bemused at my focus on him. A scowl appears on his face, and the man walks off. With my path forward seemingly open, I head to Sand Gym Town, where Professor Rowan officially asks me to help with his Pokedex project. I finally get to name my Chimchar Miss Monkey, and then Don teaches me how to catch Pokemon. With Sand Gym taken care of, I meet Looker for his first official appearance in the main series of the Pokemon games, and go on to finish the Clown Quest in Jubilife to get my Poketch, before heading east for my second fight with Nancy. I may not know what angle Nancy is playing at by pretending to be so friendly, but I'm not gonna let it get to me. I've gotta stay sharp here. I go into the fight with Miss Monkey, comfortably leveled above Nancy's Pokemon, allowing her to ignore Starly's growl and take down the early route bird and the water-type starter with a barrage of embers. Nancy congratulates me on a well-fought battle, and I walk off wondering what's going through my rival's mind. I make my way to Ouroboros City, and Nancy gives me some helpful advice, that the local gym leader is currently down the mines, which is just as well, considering the children yearn for them. But for now, it's a quick jaunt up north to Route 207, where I'm fortunate that I'm able to find the second encounter of the run, a Machop. I find one after a few minutes of searching, and... No. Every time I try to catch one of these Machop, I find myself right back before the encounter. I go ahead and run away, and I'm able to. I'm not stuck. But I'm also certain this isn't just a monologue. This is a shiny monologue. Someone or something put me in this situation, and unfortunately for me, the only way I can see out is through it. So here we go. In the process of trying to find my shiny Machop, I find two different shiny Kricketune until I finally see the green-tinted hue of my new friend. I name our newfound Machop Shrek, and it turns out that our new teammate has the plus attack and minus defense lonely nature, as well as having the guts ability. And look at that! It only took 73 in-game hours. With Shrek now on the team, I go ahead and get Miss Monkey up to level 14 where she's able to evolve into the firefighting type Monferno, making her a viable encounter for the run, and for our first gym fight. One thing is for certain though, if a wipe here means starting over with shiny hunting, I'm going to be playing this extremely carefully. I start the battle off with Miss Monkey, as Rourke sends in his Geodude. On the first turn, Miss Monkey is able to outspeed and hit Geodude hard with a Mach Punch, as the floating rock responds by setting up a Stealth Rock. On the following turn, Miss Monkey gets a higher roll Mach Punch that KOs the Second Amendment Rock, prompting Rourke to send in his Onix. On the first turn, a Mach Punch does a little over a third of the Rock Snake's health, as Miss Monkey tanks a Rock Throw. On the following turn, a Rock Smash gets a defense drop on the Onix as Miss Monkey tanks another soft Rock Throw. Rourke then decides to use a potion as the second Rock Smash gets his second defense drop, allowing Miss Monkey to get the KO on the final Mach Punch. Last out for Rourke is his ace, Craniados. But all of my concerns melt away as a Rock Smash on the first turn happens to get a crit, taking out the gym leader's final Pokemon in a single blow. With my first gym badge finally attained, I head back to Jubilife so that I can go north towards the second gym, when I find myself face to face with a duo of individuals who appear to be threatening Professor Rowan and Dawn, a sight that I know all too well. Once again, it looks like there are dark forces active in this new region, but unlike other times, this time I refuse to be the problem solver for everyone else. I help out Professor Rowan as thanks for Miss Monkey, but this Team Galactic is not my problem, and I won't be dragged into another champion's mess. As I arrive in Floroma Town, I find myself cut off from the north route by more annoying blue bowl cuts. As I head further east to seek an alternate route, I'm once again in the midst of a criminal organization trying to further their mysterious but most likely selfish cause. I get a key to the Valley Windworks, where the apparent leader of this group of rogues is holed up, and I fight my way to meet them. I find Commander Mars of Team Galactic waiting for me at the center of the Windworks, and she declares that the loser of the battle will have to leave, so I guess it's time to fight. I start off with Miss Monkey, as Mars leads off with her Zubat. Miss Monkey is able to outspeed with an Ember that does 2/3 on the first turn, as Zubat lands a Toxic. Miss M is able to finish off the Zubat, prompting Mars to send in her ace, Perugly, who flinches Miss Monkey on the first turn with a Fake Out, causing an extra round of poison damage. From here, I swap out Miss Monkey into Shrek, who's able to tank 2 scratches and a bout of poison damage before landing a one-shot KO with Karate Chop to win us the battle. Now that Mars is dealt with, I have access to multiple honey trees in the region, so I take care of the Eterna Forest and then go ahead and set up as many honey trees as I can. But when I make it to Eterna City, I'm grabbed by Nancy, who rushes me to the mysterious Pokemon statue in the town square, where we once again see that strange blue-haired man from before. This time I can hear what he's saying to the statue. He goes on about space and time shaping our world. Or at least that they did at one point. That's when he notices Nancy and I, and he makes a point of walking past us. But not without looking me in the eyes, he says to get out of his way. I don't think he's referring to his walking path. Deciding to ignore the ominous statement, I go to start my preparation for the next 2 encounters, when a striking and intimidating woman approaches me and asks about my Pokedex. She says that it brings back memories, and she introduces herself as Cynthia, before asking my name. She lets me know that she's been studying mythology lately, and then she gives me the HM for cut before continuing on her way. With access to quite a few honey trees, as well as Route 211's western side, I'm now faced with 2 possible encounters before me. So I slather up the trees with some honey, and then get to work with my shiny hunting for a Metatype. For now, my goal is simple. As there is no way to speed up the process of honey trees housing Pokemon, I will switch between checking the trees when they're ready, and hunting for shiny Metatype in the meantime, as well as some other miscellaneous tasks. The most important step in this process is saving in front of each honey tree before I check it, so that if I find my target, I can go ahead and shiny hunt it by resetting the save. After a 6-hour Metatype hunting session, I run around and check all of the trees. You gotta be kidding me. The first Pokemon from the first honey tree I check, a freaking Munchlax. If you're not familiar with the honey tree mechanic from Gen 4, this is an astronomically rare possibility, and even more infuriating when I finish checking my trees and find that none of them yet house a Heracross. After 3 more days of shiny hunting, Metatype, and resetting honey trees, I finally get my save state in front of a Heracross-filled honey tree. So for now, my Metatype hunting will take a back seat. Fortunately for me, it's a much faster process to reset at the tree than it was for me to go through the time loop of picking a new Chimchar from Rowan's briefcase over and over. So it only ends up taking me about 2 days of shiny hunting the tree to get our golden goose. Or in this case, our purple beetle that I name Yeet. Now before I check Yeet's nature or ability, I am preemptively banning Heracross from being used in this run until after all 8 gym leaders have already been taken care of. As much as I love the beastly fighting bug type Pokemon, lately this channel has been a little bit Heracross heavy, so our bashful neutral nature Heracross with the Swarm ability is gonna hang out in the box for a while. I'll see you in a few months! Oh boy. With our currently non-usable encounter attained, I head back to Route 211 to resume my hunt for Metatype, where I'm not as lucky with the timing. When I do finally find my new friend, I dub him Noodle in honor of his little arms, and I check to see that he has the minus attack and plus special defense calm nature paired with the astonishingly good pure power ability. Would you look at that? It's only been an extra 192 in-game hours, more than twice the time it took to find Shrek. I am preemptively sobbing at one particular encounter down the line, made even more frustrating by the fact that that particular encounter won't even be trackable with the in-game timer. But that's a future Swolbi problem. So, with my trio of shiny boys trained and ready, I finally head to the Eterna City Gym so that I can get my second gym badge. It only took me a month and a half. Jeez, this run might as well be titled the Pokemon Platinum Nuzlocke, but I have to travel the actual in-game distance to play it. And no, that will not be a future challenge. During my Honey Tree waiting time, I had gone ahead and gotten myself the Adventure Kit, so that I could go on spelunking expeditions, where I went ahead and nabbed a bunch of move-enhancing items, as well as sellables, so that I would be able to more freely purchase TMs, items, and whatever else I may need down the line. Like I said, I'm being almost paranoidingly cautious this time around. You try putting a month and a half into a single Pokemon Nuzlocke just to be at the door of the second gym and not feel nerve-wracking anxiety at the prospect of restarting. All the same, there's no point in stopping now, so I head in to face off against Gardenia, the Grass-type gym leader. She informs me that I'll have to beat every trainer in here to face her, so yeah. With that taken care of, we start the battle. Gardenia starts off with her Turtwig, as I lead in with Miss Monkey. On the first turn, Miss Monkey is able to outspeed and one-shot the Grass Turtle with a single Flame Wheel, getting her enough experience to level up to 23. As Gardenia sends in her second Pokemon, her Cherub, who is able to survive the first Flame Wheel, as Miss Monkey gets Leech Seed. Not wanting to deal with the recovery, I swap out Miss Monkey into Shrek, as Gardenia uses a turn to heal. Cherub then goes for a Safeguard on the following turn, as Shrek is able to hit a critical hit Revenge that leaves the Cherub in the red again. On the following turn, Gardenia decides not to heal, so Shrek tanks a Magical Leaf before finishing the berries off with a return. Out last for Gardenia is her ace, Roserade, so I switch out from Shrek and back into Miss Monkey, who tanks a soft Magical Leaf. Miss Monkey is then able to prove her worth as our team leader by getting a one-shot off on the Roserade with the Flame Wheel, granting me my second badge. I try to take my badge and leave town before I can get dragged into anything else, but sure enough, there are already some blue bowl cuts preventing my exit. So I begrudgingly head up to the radio tower so that I can deal with the obstruction. I cut my way past the trees planted at the entrance. Who the hell designed this place? And once inside, I find Looker, who is apparently extremely talented in the art of self-disguise. I take care of the bowl cut grunts and find the second of the 3 fightable Galactic commanders, Jupiter. Funnily enough, she doesn't even appear to have noticed that an insurrection happened within her takeover at all, but once I get her attention, it's time to battle. Jupiter starts off with her Zubat, as I lead in with Miss Monkey. On the first turn, Miss Monkey hits a Zubat hard with the Flame Wheel, leaving the bat in the red, as they hit back hard with a Wing Attack. Miss Monkey is then able to finish off the Pokemon with the second Flame Wheel, leaving Jupiter to send in her ace, Skunk Tank. I leave Miss Monkey in to hit another Flame Wheel, as she tanks a non-crit Night Slash well. I then go ahead and leave Miss Monkey in on the following turn to do more damage with yet another Flame Wheel, which does risk her to a high roll Night Slash crit, but we don't get the 1 in 16 odds, so our starter is able to finish off the tanky Skunk Pokemon on the following turn with one final Flame Wheel. As I leave the radio tower and go to pick up the bike I was promised, I cross paths with the tall, intimidating Mama Cynthia, who tells me that she's been looking for me, and then presents me with a Pokemon egg. With our future HM Pokemon packed firmly in our bag amidst the ancient tablets of Arceus and a bunch of sharp rocks, I'm sure it'll be fine, I make my way past the cycling road and to the southwestern entrance of Mount Cornet, where I'm jump scared by Dawn, but she just gives me the VS Seeker and goes on her merry way. Once inside Mount Cornet, I once again cross paths with the enigmatic blue-haired man. This time he no longer speaks of time and space, but of human nature, and its corrupting influence on the world. He laughs darkly to himself and pauses. His eyes rake me over once more, before he leaves abruptly, pushing past me without concern. Yeah, okay, whatever that was about. Onward with my gym challenge. Now that I'm on the eastern side of Mount Cornet, I get access to an incredibly useful resource going forward, the Berry Master. Though he only gives a berry a day, with how long some of these shiny hunts have taken, by the time I'm finished finding all of my available encounters, I'll have his entire collection, the only remaining berries being available once I get to Pastoria. But for now, it's a grinding session for the boys as we get ready to take to Hearthhome so that we can fight the third gym leader, Fantina. With the level cap being at 26, I'm locked in with only Miss Monkey being at her mid-stage evolution, but I've got a plan in mind to get us through this. Fantina starts the fight off with her Duskull, as I send down Shrek. It's not a guarantee here, but just maybe, while I go for Foresight on the first turn, Duskull will use a Will-O-Wisp. No luck on turn 1, as Duskull just goes for a weak pursuit. But on the following turn, I have Shrek go for a revenge so that he'll go second, and the Duskull fires off and lands their Will-O-Wisp, allowing Shrek to one-shot the ghost type with his fists. Extremely satisfying. Out next for Fantina is her Hunter, who's able to outspeed and hit a soft Shadow Claw, as Shrek misses a Rock Tomb. Shrek then tanks another Shadow Claw before getting off the Rock Tomb, and proccing a speed drop. From here I swap out into Miss Monkey, who tanks a Shadow Claw before finishing off the ghost Pokemon with a Flame Wheel. Out last for Fantina is her ace, Miss Magius, who gets outsped and hit for a little over a third before hitting back with a hard Psyshock, leaving Miss Monkey in the red, but this was her goal from the start. With Miss Monkey now in Blaze range, her following Flame Wheel is more than enough for her to get the 2-shot KO off on the Miss Magius, granting us our 3rd gym badge. With Fantina taken care of, I remind myself that Nancy's waiting for me at the east exit out of town, so I do some light leveling to get Shrek to evolve into a beefy Machoke before going to face down my rival. Nancy appears genuinely happy to see me, and with a shout of excitement, she starts the battle. She leads off with her now intimidating Staravia, as I lead off with my pre-poisoned Shrek, negating the attack drop with Guts. On the first turn, Shrek tanks a wing attack with more than half of his health remaining before firing back a devastating revenge that one-shots the bird Pokemon. Out second for Nancy is her starter Prinplup, but here it's the same song and dance after Shrek tanks a Bubble Beam. Nancy's third Pokemon out is a Roserade, so I switch out from the low on health Shrek into Miss Monkey, who takes a soft Mega Drain like a champ, before one-shotting the flower on the following turn with the Flame Wheel. Last out for my rival is her newly caught Ponyta, which goes down in 2 Mach Punches, as they only get off a Tail Whip, ending the battle. Nancy once again congratulates me on a well-fought battle, taking her loss in stride as she promises to get stronger, racing off without bothering to wait for a reply. I'm starting to like this new Nancy. It's nice not to be threatened or constantly mocked. As I progress onward to Route 209, my egg hatches, and I'm greeting with my new Togepi, who I lovingly name Slave. I then proceed to run around the required 20,000 or so steps to evolve the little egg, so that I would have a future flying Pokemon, and I use the time to run back to the Wayward Cave, where I can grab the Earthquake TM, which will be extremely helpful for us going forward. I make it past Celestic Town, and decide to spice things up by fighting the Ace Trainers at the end in a double battle, which goes off without a hitch after I'm able to knock out one of the trainers' Pokemon, leaving it at a 2v1. Once I arrive in Veilstone City, I beeline for the gym, where I meet up with Dawn again, who says something about going shopping, before a masked singer, who was into the gimmick before it was cool, leaves the fighting-type gym and introduces themselves to us as Crasher Wake, another gym leader I'll have to face soon enough. With Wake's warning to be cautious taken to heart, I make my way through the gym-themed gym until I've done enough lifting to make my way to Maylene, the fighting gym type leader of Veilstone City. I have nothing but respect for this foe, but now it's time for a battle. Maylene starts the fight off with her Meditite, as I send in Miss Monkey. Meditite gets off a fake out in turn 1, prompting a flinch, before a Flame Wheel on the following turn leaves the noodle-armed foe with a third, before a Rock Tomb hits Miss Monkey fairly hard. I then swap from Miss Monkey to Shrek on another Rock Tomb, before Shrek tanks a Drain Punch on the following turn, where he promptly knocks out the Meditite with a return. Out second for Maylene is her Ace Lucario, who also hits a hard Drain Punch before Shrek is able to take out the furry with a single Earthquake, leaving the gym leader to send out her final Pokemon, a boring and non-shiny Machoke of her own. I swap out Shrek for Noodle, as Maylene's Machoke goes for Focus Energy. On the following turn, a Confusion does roughly a third of the big guy's health, as he hits a Strength in return. And with that, a final high jump kick finishes off the fighting-type Pokemon, winning my team our 4th gym badge. Well fought, Maylene. As I leave the gym, Dawn rushes at me with a look of fear on her face. Apparently some of the bull-headed grunts had taken her Pokedex, so I head over to where they were to help her get it back. Once the grunts are taken care of, Looker shows up again, where he decides, as the professional secret police officer that he is, that the best call here is to have the 10-year-old go with him inside the nefarious warehouse to check for more trouble. Outstanding thought process here. While we don't find any more grunts or guards, Looker does point out and hand me the Fly HM, which I guess had just been sitting here on the ground for safekeeping. With our new form of travel attained, I decide it's time to head out from Veilstone and towards Pastoria. On the way, I go ahead and show the optimal process for fighting an evolution user, and before long, I find myself in Pastoria City, where I go ahead and ignore yet another conspicuous bowl cut, and head straight for the Great Marsh. Now, theoretically, the Great Marsh is home to my next encounter, but unfortunately for me, Krogunk is an extremely low percentage Pokemon in the marsh, even when they're a featured Pokemon in one of the regions. So, with no Krogunk being the featured Pokemon in any of the 6 areas, I go ahead and leave the marsh for now. I grab the first of many berries from the Berry Lady in Pastoria, before heading on over to Route 212, where I'm able to find a Dawnstone in the mud of the swamp. With this in hand, I head back to Hearthome City, and then west to Route 208, where I can begin the next tedious leg of my journey, shiny hunting a Ralts. Unfortunately for me, Ralts is not the most common Pokemon in the area, so let's see how bad the damage is. So after 2 weeks of shiny hunting, checking the Great Marsh daily, meeting the Berry Master and the Pastoria City Berry Girl, and farming for red, green, blue, and yellow shards, I finally find my prize, a male shiny Ralts. About 4 days before this, I had run across a female shiny Ralts, and I did a lot of arguing with myself as to whether or not that eliminated the encounter, but I ultimately decided to continue with the shiny hunt, as a female Ralts is incapable of ever attaining the fighting type, meaning that the female does not qualify at the encounter. Plus, now I get to suffer for even longer, so. At the end of it all, I had a bag full of berries, shards, and I had countered not only the female shiny Ralts, but 2 shiny Buddy as well, before eventually getting the male shiny Ralts that I name Edward, for Scissorhands. Edward has the neutral quirky nature, as well as the trace ability, but that will change once we get him up to the final evolution. So, with Edward properly trained and leveled up, I head to multiple different move tutors around Pastoria to diversify our move pools across the board and increase our damage output for the squad. With my preparation set, I head to the Pastoria City Gym to continue my gym challenge. But before I can head inside, I'm surprised by Nancy, who I guess used some time in the last 2 weeks to go ahead and beat the gym leader, so now she wants to see what I've got. Nancy starts the battle with her tried and true Staravia, who gets the usual Intimidate off on Edward, who's excited for his first battle. On the first turn, I risk taking a good chunk of damage from a strong wing attack as I have Edward set up a sword dance. But I get lucky, and Nancy plays it just as greedy, and has Staravia set up a double team. On the following turn, my setup is the one that wins, as Edward is able to connect with the Psycho Cut, finishing off the flying threat in one hit. Out second for Nancy is her Prinplup, but Edward is prepared with a Leaf Blade that demolishes the Penguin Pokemon in another one-hit KO. Nancy's Ponyta and Roserade are then also an easy one-hit apiece with a Psycho Cut, ending an underwhelming rival battle with Edward's first ever sweep. As I work my way through the gym, Miss Monkey makes her way to level 36, where she's able to evolve into an Infernape, before we fight our way to Crasher Wake. The Water-type gym leader starts off with his Intimidate Gyarados, as I lead off with Noodle. On the first turn, Noodle hits a Thunder Punch that Gyarados survives due to the Intimidate, as Noodle gets absolutely checked with a Waterfall that leaves him gasping for air at 2 HP. Wake heals on the following turn as Noodle hits another Thunder Punch, and then a third takes the Flying Fish down. Out second for Wake is his Floatzel, so I swap into Shrek, who tanks an Aqua Jet well, before also taking a half-damage Brine, and then landing a double power Revenge, putting Floatzel in the red before his Citrus Berry. Now that Shrek is below half, I know that Floatzel is going to go for the Brine, so I swap into Edward, who takes the hit well with his fairly high special defense. Floatzel outspeeds on the following turn, and hits Edward with a Crunch that gets a defense drop, but it's too little too late for that to matter, as a Leaf Blade finishes off the speedy Water Weasel, before another Leaf Blade can finish off Wake's final Pokemon Quagsire on the following turn. I head out of the gym with Crasher Wake to find Nancy frantically trying to tell us about a suspicious individual when a massive boom shakes the earth around us. I chase down a suspicious Bullcut, once again crossing paths with the seemingly omniscient Looker, before I'm able to battle the Grunt. With another blue Bullcut taken care of, I look up to find Cynthia approaching me, and this time she gives me the secret potion, though I'm not really sure why she couldn't have just given it to the Psyduck herself if she was already going to be here. Oh, what's that? You want me to go meet your grandmother? Oh, well, this is all happening so fast. I wasn't really expecting this. I mean, we hardly know each other. You haven't even told me what you do yet. But I don't want to fumble this bag, so I make a mad dash for Celestic Town, having Slava clear out the fog to ensure that we don't get an incredibly poorly timed miss due to low visibility. And on the way there, Noodle levels up to 37 and evolves into a Medicham. Soon after, I arrive at the quaint little village, but things don't appear to be alright. In the center of town, there's another Galactic Grunt who threatens to set off a bomb here too, so I make quick work of him, and my future grandmother-in-law takes me into the shrine that houses the ancient painting with Sinnoh's mythology, as she tells me about the balance of the world, and the 2 deity-like Pokemon who controlled it, as well as the trio who helped keep the balance between the 2. The blue-haired man that I'd seen before approaches us. The man who introduces himself as Cyrus claims that he wants to know more about the balance of the world, and of the trio that was believed to help keep that balance. But as he speaks about wanting to end strife and suffering, all of his words seem honey and glossed over. Well practiced, but without any passion behind them. As though Cyrus has made this declaration time and again. When he finishes his speech, he asks if I plan to stop him. I've sworn not to butt my head in where it doesn't belong, but at this point, I'm about as involved as I can be. So I grit my teeth and get ready for battle. Cyrus starts off with a Sneasel, as I send in Shrek. And on the first turn, an Ice Punch does decent damage to Shrek, before a double-powered Revenge is able to ring the Sneasel's bell with one clean 4-time super effective hit. Out second for Cyrus is his Golbat, so I switch out Shrek for Edward, who tanks an Air Cutter well on the swap, before my Blade-Armed Pokemon is able to one-shot the Golbat with a Psycho Cut. Out last for Cyrus is his Ace Murkrow, who hits Noodle with the Drill Peck as I swap him in, leaving him hanging on with just 12 HP. Fortunately, Noodle is able to one-shot the Pokemon on the following turn with an Ice Punch. After the battle, Cyrus takes off, and Cynthia's grandma gives me the Surf HM as thanks for defending the village. As an added bonus, Cynthia even shows up to make sure that the family meet and greet went well. Isn't she sweet? With my side quest taken care of, it's onward to the gym challenge. As I head towards Canalave City, Shrek evolves into a Machamp, and with this new destination acquired, I now also have access to the Move Deleter. So once all of my team's moves have been shuffled around correctly, I make my way to cross the bridge when I'm approached in a familiar fashion by Nancy, who has once again just finished off the gym and is now ready to test our mettle. Here we go. Nancy starts off the battle with her now fully evolved Intimidate Staraptor, as I lead off with Noodle. On the first turn, Noodle lands a strong Thunder Punch for over half as Staraptor uses a double team. The double team amounts to nothing as the second Thunder Punch gets the KO, and from here, it's Nancy's starter Pokemon Empoleon. Another Thunder Punch from Noodle does more than half, as Empoleon launches a hard Aerial Ace. Noodle gets a bit of recovery by finishing off the Emperor Penguin with a Drain Punch, as Nancy sends in her newly caught Heracross. I swap out from Noodle into Miss Monkey as Heracross hits a hard Aerial Ace, and then I have Miss Monkey hit back with a hard Fire Punch, but it's not quite enough. Heracross is then able to hit Miss Monkey hard with another Aerial Ace, but I get lucky with no crit, so another Fire Punch finishes off the Fighting Dog on the following turn. Next out for Nancy is her Rapidash, so I swap out the low health Miss Monkey into Shrek, who tanks a takedown on the swap. Rapidash then wastes the turn going for a Tail Whip as Shrek puts down the horse with an Earthquake. This means that Nancy only has a Roserade left, who also wastes their only turn, just setting up a layer of Toxic Spikes, as yet another Earthquake gets the one-shot KO to win me the rifle battle. That non-one-hit KO on Heracross reminds me that Miss Monkey needs one final move upgrade, so it's off to the Flamethrower TM from the Ironworks before I make my way back to the Canalave City Gym and melt my way through the gym trainers all the way to Byron. I start off the battle for my 6th gym badge, sending in Miss Monkey as Byron starts off with his Magneton. Miss Monkey makes quick work of the magnets with a single Flamethrower, and then a similar situation goes down with Byron's second Pokemon, Steelix. Out third for the gym leader is his Ace Bastiodon, which survives a Flamethrower above half health. So after Miss Monkey takes a Stone Edge from the Steel Dino, I swap out to Shrek, as Bastiodon just misses a second Stone Edge. And finally, Byron has Bastiodon go for a taunt for some reason, so a Revenge cleanly knocks the Pokemon out, winning me the fight in my 6th gym badge. As I leave the gym, I'm once again met by someone or something waiting for me. I'm sensing a pattern here. But unfortunately for Nancy, I won't be able to join her at the library to meet Professor Rowan, as I haven't gone to Iron Island yet, for good reason. So, with nothing else to prepare, I set out for the island to face the most grueling challenge of the run. After I arrive on the island, it's a quick jaunt to grab the Strength HM, and then a slightly less quick trip to help Riley take on Team Galactic in the mine of the island. As thanks for my help, Riley dooms me to yet another round of Purgatory, as I take the egg, run around the island until... Yep. 183. 183 resets. That's how lucky I got on what could have been a 1 in 8,192 odds journey. This still took me 12 hours, even with the max speed enhancement that my Nintendo DS could have active. But I could not have asked for a better run of luck here. This was what I was prepared to spend over a month on all by itself, but for some unknown reason, RNGesus has blessed me this day. Real talk, 183 is now almost a spiritual number for me. It's crazy. I don't record these videos with a mic on, but if you could have heard me hooping and hollering when this happened, you would have thought that I was impersonating the caveman from SpongeBob. I named my new shiny Riolu Ol Yeller, and this little guy has the neutral serious nature, as well as the inner focus ability, as opposed to steadfast. I head back to Canalave City, where I take another 20,000 steps while Yeller holds the Soothe Bell, and then I head back to Route 201 to evolve my little Riolu into a Lucario. I finish training Ol Yeller in Special Attack and Speed EVs before returning to Canalave City Library, where I finally meet up with Professor Rowan, Don, and Nancy, where we get into the mid to late game exposition dump before the climax really begins to ramp up. An explosion shakes the region, interrupting our conversation after all of the key points have been made. allowing the plot to progress. It's decided that we'll split up and check the 3 Great Lakes of the Spirits, and I head out to check Lake Valor. And for funsies along the way, I evolve my level 4 Slavehum into a Togekiss, because, why not? When I arrive at Lake Valor, I find it completely drained of water, with Magikarp flopping around helplessly all over the place. One kind Bullcut even offers to let me join them, but I pass for now, opting to instead continue into Valor Cavern, where the 3rd and final Galactic Commander is waiting for me after they finish transporting the legendary Pokemon of Lake Valor. Saturn starts off the battle with his Golbat, as I send in Edward. On the first turn, Edward continues his Golbat KO streak with yet another Psycho Cut one-shot, prompting Saturn to send out his Bronzor. A Night Slash from Edward doesn't do much, as Bronzor hits its soft Gyro Ball. So on the following turn, I have Edward use a Swords Dance, as Bronzor just so happens to also set up an Iron Defense. A second Night Slash does another third of the Bronzor's health, as Saturn has the Pokemon go for another Gyro Ball, Edward still having more than half of his health remaining. A third Night Slash puts the floating gear down, and outlast for Saturn is his Toxicroak, which doesn't stand a chance against the Sword Dance boosted Psycho Cut. With Saturn taken care of, I rush to Lake Verity to check on Rowan and Dawn, and when I arrive, I can tell that they have their hands full. I bully the grunts, and when I make it to Mars, I bully her again too, which culminates in Professor Rowan telling me that I now need to head north to the 3rd and final lake so that I can check on that one too. What the hell was the point in splitting up if I'm just going to do all the work again? 2 lakes down and Lake Acuity to go, so I head north through Mount Coronet, and then further north through the blizzard-filled routes 216 and 217. And I also pass by Maylene on my way up north, who proves herself to be one of the worst types of people. Just admit you're cold. Before I'm finally able to see clearly again at the Lake Acuity lakefront, I spot Nancy up on a ledge out of reach, once again having beaten the gym leader ahead of me, so I head to Snowpoint City to face the 7th gym. I get an icy reception at Snowpoint, but I heat things up quickly in the gym and get rid of all the snowballs blocking me from taking on Candace. She starts the battle off with her Sneasel, as I send in Miss Monkey. On the first turn, Miss Monkey sets up an incredibly important Stealth Rock, as Candace has her Sneasel go for an Aerial Ace. Miss Monkey then hits a priority Mach Punch on the following turn to take down the Sneasel, prompting Candace's second Pokemon, Piloswine, which takes just enough chip damage from the Stealth Rock layer to ensure that Miss Monkey's Flamethrower on this following turn gets the one-shot. Luckily for me, Candace then sends in her Frostlass, which also takes enough Stealth Rock chip to be in range of a Flamethrower one-shot. Outlast for Candace is her Abomasnow, but even the newly set up Hail won't help change the tides now, as one final Flamethrower ends the fight, giving me my 7th gym badge. I know that fight looked like it was a breeze, but without that layer of Stealth Rocks, it could have been a much different story. With Rock Climb now usable outside of battle, I teach it to an HM Mon and then head back to Lake Acuity, where I find that I'm just a little bit too late to help Nancy face off against Jupiter, and the final of the Lake Legendary trio has been captured. Fortunately, Team Galactic hasn't been what you would call covert in selecting a location for their Galactic headquarters, so a quick fly down to Veilstone City gets me where I need to be to continue doing the jobs of all the adults. I haven't even seen hide or hair of this region's champion. Probably for good reason if they know about what happened in Hoenn. But who is here? Looker. He handily gives me the access key to the warehouse we'd investigated earlier, giving me access to the base and everything inside. He then tells me not to do anything dangerous, and then leaves me to freely wander around the secret base of a known criminal syndicate. After prowling around and taking out various grunts, I find myself in a massive room full of Galactic members, and at the head of the room, preparing to give a speech, Cyrus. He addresses his underlings in an odd fashion, saying that as he stands before them today, his name is Cyrus, before continuing on with more of the same I'd heard him say before. But it seems more energized this time, like he's putting on a show for an adoring audience. But just under the surface lies the truth. Even this is an act. After the crowd disperses, I make my way further into the base, until I find myself at Cyrus's door. I don't know if I wasn't as careful as I thought, or if the man just sits in his room at all times, but as far as I can tell, the only way he should have been this prepared is if he'd known I was coming. He admits as much as he begins speaking to me, but at this point, I'm no longer listening to the words he sent me. I'm mentally preparing myself for this battle. I start the fight off with Miss Monkey. Cyrus once again leads off with a Sneasel. I have Miss Monkey set up a layer of Stealth Rock, as Sneasel hits fairly hard with a Slash. With Miss Monkey's job done, I switch into Noodle, hoping to tank another Slash. But Sneasel goes for Screech. This is absolutely detrimental to our plan, so it's time to fall back onto Plan B. I switch into Yeller on a not very effective Ice Punch, which he tanks well, before he finishes the Sneasel off with a single Aura Sphere. Next up for Cyrus is his Ace Haunch Crow, which takes a good chunk of damage from the rocks. Since I'm winging it at this point, I have Yeller go for a Flash Cannon, which does decent damage, as well as getting a special defense drop and activating the Dark Bird's Citrus Berry, before Haunch Crow responds with a neutral Drill Peck that does heavy damage, leaving Ol Yeller in the yellow after a citrus berry of our own. With the stat drop, the KO with Flash Cannon is a certainty, leaving Cyrus with his final Pokemon, Crobat, which also takes a lovely chunk of damage on the swap. Knowing that Crobat's special attack is fairly low, and that Yeller's special defense is fairly high, I risk the crit on an Air Cutter to get off one final Flash Cannon to guarantee the safety of our next Pokemon. And no crit. With Crobat's health lower than I anticipated, my swap is even more free as Cyrus uses a full restore, and I bring in Miss Monkey. Crobat outspeeds and uses an Air Cutter that uses up Miss Monkey's Cobra Berry, allowing her to tank the move extremely well, before hitting back hard with a Thunder Punch. With no one on the team able to take 2 Air Cutters or outspeed Crobat, it's all down to Miss Monkey surviving the range, and not getting hit with a crit. She makes it through, and with one final mighty Thunder Punch, she sends the Crobat to the Pokemon Center. I barely managed to scrape by that one, with Pokemon at higher levels. The next time I meet Cyrus, I may not walk away to talk about it. I finish searching the HQ until I find the Lake Trio being isolated, so I make quick work of Saturn one more time to set them free. Afterwards, Saturn makes a point of telling me exactly where his boss went, and that I'd have to head there to stop them, which seems oddly helpful to me. I know I've got a really tough challenge ahead of me, so I go ahead and make sure that my team is prepared. I check the Great Marsh, but still no featured Krogunk. I've not had a single day this entire time where a Krogunk was featured in any of the subdivisions. It's a little ridiculous. Unfortunately, in order to make the journey as safe as possible for my team, I'm going to need 2 of my non-fighting HM Mons in order to make it to the summit of Mount Coronet, which means that I'm going into the final fight against Team Galactic with only 4 Pokemon. Only 468 hours, not including all of the time loops, and we finally made it to the climax at Mount Coronet. Cyrus, Mars, and Jupiter are all here and ready to enact their plan to create Cyrus's dream world. Mars and Jupiter step forward to take care of me themselves, but out of nowhere, Nancy arrives to help me. We start the battle as I send in an Old Yeller, Nancy starts off with her Munchlax, and Mars and Jupiter lead in with the Bronzor duo. On the first turn, Yeller hits the left Bronzor for a little over half with a Shadow Ball, as each Bronzor sets up a Reflect and a Light Screen respectively, before Munchlax hits the Bronzor on the right with a Screech. On the next turn, I switch into Edward, who knows Brick Break, as the first Bronzor hits Munchlax with a Soft Extra Sensory. The second Bronzor uses a Soft Extra Sensory on Edward, and Munchlax uses a second Screech at the same right Bronzor. Seeing a wonderful setup opportunity, I have Edward go for a Swords Dance, as the first Bronzor hits Munchlax with another Soft Extra Sensory, and the second Bronzor unfortunately goes for a Confuse Ray, but targets Munchlax. Munchlax then hits himself in confusion. With my setup done, I have Edward target the -4 defense Bronzor, and also destroy the Light Screen and Reflect with a neutral Brick Break that gets the KO. The remaining Bronzor hits Munchlax with yet another extra sensory, as Munchlax snaps out of confusion to use a stockpile. Out second for Mars is her Perugly, so on the next turn, Perugly outspeeds the rest to hit Munchlax with a slash that fails to KO the Eating Fiend, before a Brick Break finishes off our feline foe. Bronzor then sets up a new Reflect, and Munchlax uses Swallow to regain some health. Out last for Mars is her Golbat, but with the Reflect up, I decide to take out the Bronzor with a Brick Break, finishing off the Psychic Steel type, as Golbat goes for a Poison Thing on Munchlax, who survives in extremely low health before using another stockpile. I can't believe the Mad Lad is still in this. Out second for Jupiter is her Skunk Tank, so I decide to take out the greater threat being the Flying type Golbat, Edward finishing off the bat with 1 Psycho Cut, leaving Skunk Tank to finally put down the pudgy legend that was Nancy's Munchlax. Out second for Nancy is her Staraptor, who gets a very nice Intimidate off on the Skunk Tank, but it turns out to be unnecessary, as Edward gets the 1-hit KO with the Brick Break. This leaves Jupiter with her Golbat, who similarly goes down to a Psycho Cut on the last turn. Though Nancy and I managed to stop the Commander duo, we're still too late, as Cyrus uses the red chain he's created to summon the Pokemon of space and time, Palkia and Dialga. But as the 2 godlike beings appear before us, the world begins to tremble, and the sky turns dark overhead. As a massive chasm appears at the top of Sky Pillar, the Lake Trio legendaries appear to attempt to contain the massive waves of energy, and in the midst of all of this, I see Cyrus, still looking on as though none of this is a shock or surprise. When the portal or gateway or whatever it is finishes opening, Cyrus heads inside without hesitation. When all that's left is a rift in time and space, Cynthia appears to assess the situation, at which point she finally declares it to be, not good. Like, yeah, no shit. Cynthia and I enter the Distortion World, where we make our way through the puzzles and winding walkways of this strange land, and Cynthia tells me about the legend of Dialga, Palkia, and a third mysterious Pokemon known only as Giratina. While these 3 Pokemon were the embodiments of space, time, and distortion respectively, there were 3 lesser spiritual legendaries who would come to symbolize the traits of humanity, ultimately becoming the Lake Legendaries. When Cyrus gathered the 3 spirits to summon time and space, he seemingly, unknowingly also created the right circumstance for Giratina to make its way from its own Distortion World and back into our dimension. And apparently, Cynthia's research into all of this is why she's been just moments behind me as I wind up fixing all the problems in Sinnoh along my journey. But as Cynthia and I arrive at the end of the Twisted Pathways, we find Cyrus, not confused or apprehensive about this world, but extremely comfortable, as though waiting for us purposefully in a domain of his own. It's at this point that he begins speaking, acknowledging me directly. He says that it's finally time. Time to end the cycle that has been continuing for so many eons. Time for him to get the vengeance that he's been cultivating so carefully over thousands upon thousands of lifetimes. Seeing the look of confusion on my face, he continues, explaining that at one point in time, he too had started a Pokemon journey across Sinnoh. That he'd started his path here after a point in his life where he had fallen from grace. That he had taken the life of another in an act that could only be described as self-fulfilling justice. But once the deed was done, he found himself sentenced to serve a form of penance, some divine judgment putting him on a new path here in Sinnoh, one that he refused to follow. So he walked the path as far as he could without giving away his intentions, making his way all the way to the Distortion World with the help of those by his side, where he eventually went on to fight and defeat Cyrus. But it was at this point that he no longer did what he was supposed to. He didn't take the next step. He didn't end the threat that Giratina posed to the 2 worlds. Instead, the beast spoke to him. It told him of the plight he was faced with, being an errand boy for a being who saw him as nothing more than an ant, and it offered him an alternative. Instead of fighting the fights of others, instead of being a mindless puppet for the sake of an unseen force, instead of living a life for others, constantly having to rise to the responsibilities of individuals who have failed to do so, he would be given a new purpose. Swolbi, not Cyrus, but me. The me that was never stuck in this time loop. He'd made a deal with Giratina, to spend an eternity fighting against the attempts of Arceus. A deal to finish every Swolbi that was sent down the same path. A deal that he'd successfully carried out for millennia. And it would all end here with me. I don't have time to process this information fully before I'm dragged into a battle against the sociopath. But what I do manage to sort out doesn't bode well. My only comforting thought being that without this supposed purgatory that I've experienced, without the time it had taken me to get here, I wouldn't have had anything close to what I had planned for this battle. I start off with Miss Monkey. Cyrus leads in with his Houndoom. Miss Monkey sets up an extremely important layer of stealth rocks before tanking a flamethrower from Cyrus's Houndoom, which does over half of our starter's health with a critical hit. Not good. We need to finish off Houndoom while Miss Monkey is in, so we risk a crit and launch a hard Mach Punch, leaving Houndoom in the red before he hits another flamethrower, with no crit. A second Mach Punch takes down the good boy on the next turn. With our setup complete, Cyrus sends in his Gyarados, which gets off the Intimidate on Miss Monkey, also taking Stealth Lock, allowing me to swap into Noodle on the following turn, who can now get a clean shot with Thunder Punch after taking an Earthquake. Out third for Cyrus is his Hunt Crow, which also takes a good chunk of damage from Stealth Rock on the swap, before Noodle is able to hit hard with a Never Melt Ice boosted Ice Punch. That gets the high roll to KO with one hit. If Miss Monkey hadn't set up the Stealth Rock, or if Gyarados had intimidated Noodle instead, this would have been a guaranteed death for at least one of my squad members. Out fourth for Cyrus is his Crobat, who I know for a fact will be faster than Noodle, as well as every other team member that we have on the roster. So, with a heavy heart, I leave Noodle in, and he's able to tank the Air Slash with a held Cobra Berry, surviving with 25 HP. Noodle is then able to hit back hard with another Ice Punch that just barely misses out on the one-hit KO. Come on! I have to take the risk here, as I don't know for sure what Cyrus will do. While he does have healing items, he should also see the guaranteed KO with literally any move that his Crobat has, so I'm unsure what the AI is going to decide. After a long while of considering my options, I decide to risk it, keeping Noodle in and selecting Ice Punch once again. And Cyrus goes for the heal, with Crobat ending up with a little less than a third of their health left after the second Ice Punch. Now confident that Cyrus will go for another Air Slash, I use the turn to swap into Old Yellow, who I'm hoping is tanky enough to make it through a second hit after. On the swap in, Yeller ends up with a little less than 2/3 of his health left, so I risk the crit on the next turn. No crit. Now I just have to hope that the 90% accurate Rock Slide hits, and Ol Yeller gets it. Outlast for Cyrus is his weave type, and unfortunately for him, he's almost guaranteed to go for a fake out on the first turn, allowing Ol Yeller's inner focus to shine brighter than ever before, denying the flinch, and getting the one shot with the 4x super effective Aura Sphere. And with that, I've done it. I beat Cyrus, myself, without losing anyone. I honestly didn't think that it would happen after Noodle didn't get the one shot on Crobat, but we did it. The man who claims that he used to be me stands silent for a moment before declaring that this means nothing. I'm still trapped in my purgatory, and if I take out Giratina, the only outcome will be the destruction of the two worlds. But maybe, just maybe, that same purgatory has the answer hidden in plain sight. So I approach the embodiment of the beast before me, aware that fighting him could be an extremely risky ordeal, and that any attempt to catch them would merely set me back before the fight. Unless I start the process, using my curse as my strength, resetting time again and again, until bingo. I approach Giratina and he appears before me, in his shiny form. This time, I throw the Master Ball that had been so arrogantly gifted to me by Cyrus, and nothing. Time doesn't reset. Neither the Distortion World or mine is destroyed. Everything is fine. With everything taken care of, Cynthia and I leave the Distortion World, but I've got too much on my mind to stick around and chat. I head to Sand Gym Town to check in with Rowan and Dawn as my mind races. But before I'm able to get too down on myself, my team, my friends are there to comfort me. Miss Monkey, Shrek, Noodle, Edward, and Ol Yeller, all encouraging me and pushing me forward to keep going. And I know that things are going to be okay. I am not the man that Cyrus had become, and my experiences in this so-called purgatory are why. I can't say that I wouldn't have done those same things, as I clearly did. It was only through the process of having to take my time that I was able to grow in the ways that I did, and that I didn't let my darker side continue to take hold. I'll never be able to make up for what happened with Steven, but I can promise that from this moment forward, nothing like that will happen again. With the world saved from a villain that can, for once, only be described as completely my fault, I check in with Rowan to assure him that, yes, I did get the Devil's Pokedex entry, and I finally get back to my gym challenge. Or I will in a minute. I make a pit stop in Pastoria to stop by the Great Marsh, and oh my god, there it is, a featured Krogunk. I do something a bit cheeky here. Knowing that I'm on a countdown for how long I'll be able to shiny hunt before the day ends and my featured Krogunk is gone, I decided to try and do a little bit of a save scum strat to try and force a Krogunk encounter every time that I reload the save, while getting a different roll on Krogunk's stats. This works with a little bit of success, as I'd say I probably got a Krogunk like 60% of the time, but it works well enough, as after 6 hours I have my prize. I name my Krogunk Sandy, who has the increased defense and lowered special defense Lax Nature, and the Dry Skin ability. Extremely useful. I make my way east to Sunyshore City. Upon arrival, I met with an red afroed individual who asked me to light a fire in the heart of Volcaner, the gym leader in Sunyshore City. Apparently, it's been a long time since anyone has been able to challenge the 8th gym leader and get the better of him, so he's losing his desire to fight. Well, with that extremely anticlimactic 8th gym taken care of, and a gym leader apparently fired up after getting absolutely bodied in that last fight, it's time to head north to Victory Road. Victory Road goes off without a hitch, but before the last minute grinding begins, I go ahead and take on Nancy for one final time. I lead Noodle as Nancy leads with her Staraptor, who, as always, gets off and Intimidate. Noodle's Thunder Punch misses the KO due to the Intimidate, as Staraptor nails Noodle hard with an Aerial Ace, before going down to a second Thunder Punch. Out second for Nancy is her Roserade, who goes down in a single Ice Punch, prompting her to send in her Rapidash, who hits Miss Monkey with a Fire Blast on the next turn swap. Miss Monkey sets up a layer of Stealth Rocks as Rapidash bounces into the air, so on a following turn, I swap into the half-steel Ol Yeller, who tanks the bounce well, though he does get paralyzed, before baiting another Fire Blast that Miss Monkey takes on the following swap. A Mach Punch, a bounce setup, and a repeat of the earlier swaps, and on the following repeat, I change to swapping into Edward, who tanks a Fire Blast before finishing off the Flaming Pain in the Ass. Nancy then sends in her 4th Pokemon, her starter Empoleon, who goes down in a single Brick Break, before sending in her own Heracross, who goes down in a single Psycho Cut. before finally sending in her Snorlax, who finally goes down on one more Brick Break. With my final fight with Nancy taken care of, she looks, I don't know, satisfied? She smiles at me knowingly, and she leaves without a word. With that taken care of, I finish the grind, and the boys, and Miss Monkey, are all set, with my team consisting of the following. Miss Monkey, the Infernape, holding either the Koba or the Papaya Berries, and a moveset containing Flamethrower, Stealth Rock, Flare Blitz, and Mach Punch. Sandy the Toxicroak, holding either the Koba or Papaya Berries, and a moveset containing Vacuum Wave, Nasty Plot, Sludge Bomb, and Mud Bomb. All Yeller the Lucario, holding a Shucca Berry, and a moveset containing Shadow Ball, Rock Slide, Flash Cannon, and Aura Sphere. Edward the Gallade, holding either a Koba Berry or the Kasib Berry, with a moveset containing Swords Dance, Psycho Cut, Leaf Blade, and Brick Break. Yeet the Heracross, holding either a Koba or a Papaya Berry, and a moveset consisting of Aerial Ace, Horn Attack, Mega Horn, and Close Combat. And Noodle the Metacham, holding either a Koba Berry or a Kasib Berry, with a moveset consisting of Drain Punch, Ice Punch, Zen Headbutt, and Thunder Punch. With my preparation set, I head into the first room of the Elite Four, where I face off with the Bug-type trainer Aaron. I start with Miss Monkey, as Aaron leads with Yanmega. Miss Monkey sets up a Stealth Rock, as Yanmega starts with a troubling double team strat, which is a worrying combo with Yanmega's speed boost ability. On the following turn, Miss Monkey is still fast enough to outspeed with the Flamethrower that connects, getting the one-shot on the Flying Bug. Out second for Aaron is his terrifying Drapion, who survives Miss Monkey's first Flamethrower before hitting back with what would have been a much harder Aerial Ace if not for a held Koba Berry, before Miss Monkey can finish off the Bug-type imposter on the following turn. From here, it's a Flamethrower apiece for Aaron's Heracross, Vespa Queen, and Caesar, our starter able to start off the Elite Four run right with a solo sweep. I head into the next room, which houses the second of the Elite Four, the Ground-type trainer Bertha. I lead off with Edward, as Bertha sends in her Wish Cache. Turn 1, Edward uses Sword Dance, as Wish Cache sets up a Sandstorm. On the following turn, a second Sword Dance before Edward tanks an Aqua Tail from Wish Cache. With the setup complete, it's a Leaf Blade for Wish Cache, a Psycho Cut for Gliscor, Leaf Blade for Hippowdon, Leaf Blade for Golem, and a final Leaf Blade for Rhyperior, marking the second sweep of the Elite Four. As I approach the third room, I can feel things starting to heat up. When I arrive, I find the room ablaze with a Fire-type Elite Four member Flint waiting for me. He's hyped that I got Volkner excited about battling, and I'm excited that I got to put Flint through the exact same heartache. I start off with Edward, as Flint leads in with Houndoom. Edward sets up a Sword Dance, as Houndoom sets up the Sun, before a Brick Break on the following turn puts down the Pooch, leaving Flint to send in his Rapidash. The one Sword Dance is enough for Edward to one-shot the Rapidash with a Psycho Cut, Infernape with a Psycho Cut, Flareon with a Psycho Cut, and even Flint's Ace Magmortar goes down with one final Psycho Cut. A second sweep under Edward's belt, this one even cleaner. With 3 Elite Four members taken down in extremely anticlimactic fashion, I make my way to the room of the 4th member, who will, aside from Cynthia, be our biggest challenge of the run, the Psychic-type Elite Four member, Lucian. I lead off with Yeet in his debut battle, as Lucian sends in his Mr. Mime. On the first turn, it's an instant one-shot with a Mega Horn from Yeet, as well as a repeat against Lucian's Espeon. Third out is an Alakazam that does outspeed Yeet, but a Payapa Berry protects Yeet and lets him get another one-shot Mega Horn. Fourth out is Lucian's Bronzong, who would have survived a close combat, if not for Yeet getting an absolutely clutch critical hit. Out last for Lucian is his own Gallade, so with one final Mega Horn, it's all over as Yeet solidifies his debut sweep with another critical hit. So I guess it's more appropriate to say that this would have been the second biggest challenge of the run, if not for the absolute beast of a Pokemon Yeet. I finally make my way to the room of Champion, Cynthia, and unlike the champions of regions past, I feel a little bit melancholy here. Unlike Lance, Wallace, or Steven, Cynthia has been helping me throughout my journey, helpfully pointing me in the right direction, and always being present to help out just in case anything may go wrong, the mark of a true champion. So with a true sense of respect for my opponent, we start the final battle of the run. I lead in with Yeet, as Cynthia leads in with her Spiritomb, and on the first turn, a Mega Horn is able to hit the Pokemon hard to a quarter, before the Papaya Berry protects Yeet from what would have been a fatal Psychic. Yeet then gets the KO with an Aerial Ace, prompting Cynthia to send in her Togekiss. And it's here that we have to say our first goodbye of the run. Yeet gets a good 2/3 of health shaved off of the champion's Pokemon, before a 4-time super effective Air Slash puts down our sweet Purple Prince. But, with this necessary sacrifice made, we're able to safely switch into Noodle, who has the tools necessary to take us to victory. On the following turn, a Thunder Punch finishes off the Flying Egg, and Cynthia sends in her third Pokemon, a boring and non-shiny Lucario, that gets outsped in one shot with the Drain Punch, which prompts Cynthia to then send in her almost demonic ace, Garchomp. As I knew would happen, Even with our EV allotment, Garchomp is able to outspeed and hit Noodle hard with a Dragon Rush that leaves our stringy boy with just a sliver of health. But then Noodle is able to retaliate with a devastating 4-time super effective Ice Punch. And with that, Cynthia's Garchomp is able to hang on in the red. This means that the only possible reasoning is that this Garchomp in particular has a plus defense nature, and that it's entirely my fault that I didn't account for this possibility. No one on my team can outspeed this monster, and also get the KO after Cynthia heals. So with one last look at Noodle, my brave partner prepares to use an Ice Punch after the heal, hoping against all odds that he would get the high enough roll to ensure the one-shot this time. But he doesn't even get the chance as Cynthia goes for the kill. My team and I are speechless, but I quickly regain my senses and send in Old Yeller to continue the fight. He's able to outspeed the monstrous ground dragon with an Aura Sphere, and avenge Noodle's death. Cynthia doesn't even seem to care about her ace falling in battle, as she keeps her cool head and sends in her Milotic. Yeller gets off a hard Aura Sphere on the water type, as Milotic hits back hard with a Mirror Coat. Old Yeller lives with just 6 HP remaining, but this was definitely a second misplay on my part. On the next turn, I swap out from Old Yeller into Sandy, who takes an Ice Beam fairly well on the swap. At this point, my plan is in ashes, and I'm working on the fly. I decide to risk an Ice Beam crit, as I know I'm safe from both Surf and Mirror Coat, as I set up with Nasty Plot. And I get lucky, as Milotic heals Sandy up to near full with the Surf. Now I'm even more confident in my safety, as I set up a second Nasty Plot, as Milotic wastes her turn with a Mirror Coat, and that's when I know for certain that I've won due to this misplay. The AI sees my higher special attack, and will now always go for Mirror Coat. So, I use a third Nasty Plot to solidify the demise of Cynthia's team, as a fully boosted Sludge Bomb is able to annihilate not only Milotic, but also Cynthia's final remaining Pokemon, Roserade. With that, I've not only finished the battle, but my team of fighting types has won our hardcore Nuzlocke in Pokemon Platinum. Alright, that was definitely a much longer process than I expected when I started. I've never done a shiny lock before. I might do one again in the future. I will probably do it after Gen 6 when they switch the shiny odds down to 1 in 4,000 instead of 1 in 8,000, because, oh my god, no, never again. Thanks to everyone who watched the video through to the end. Thanks for watching any of it, honestly, and especially if you're still here. I love you guys. Without you, I wouldn't really be talking to anybody. I'd just be back where I was a year ago, making these videos for myself to watch later on. So I thank everyone from the bottom of my heart for showing me this love that I've received from you guys. It's been absolutely astonishing. And so with that, I will hopefully have my Dark Souls 3 video up by August. That's my plan. I am still stuck at Freed, where I was like a week and a half ago, but I have successfully a couple times gotten her to that 3rd phase, so we'll see. But for now, this has been Swolbi on Kenobi, signing off.